And good evening. Welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide here on the VIDA Television Network. Happy you've tuned in, everybody, tonight. I hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving surrounded by friends and family and lots of love. Of course, now all of our attention focused now on the upcoming Christmas season, and we'll have more on that in subsequent shows. As a matter of fact, tonight's show is going to be, I would rationalize what happens when you don't have a moral center. You don't have God in your life. ChrisSalcedo.com. If you want to leave a message, you can leave a message on voicemail or email there, or on Twitter, instantaneous feedback at Chris Salcedo TX, at ChrisSalcedoTX. I'm going to talk about hypocrisy, and there's a lot of it. Not from this guy. That's Tim Russert. We lost him way too early. He was one of these guys who knew how to give a good, strong interview, no matter who was sitting across from him, what political party. These days, so-called alleged journalists don't know how to do that anymore. If it's a Democrat, they're giving softball questions. If it's a Republican, they're grilling them like the Spanish Inquisition. But at any rate, he's dealing with a bit of hypocrisy here from none other back in 1998, Nancy Pelosi. Yes, she's been in Congress that long, ladies and gentlemen. Nancy Pelosi being asked about Bill Clinton.
Why the silence when there have been these allegations, serious ones, about President Clinton?
Well, I'd like to say that I think that the women of America are speaking out about what they think about this whole situation. And the women of America are just like other Americans in that they value fairness, they value privacy, and do not want to see a person with uncontrolled power, uncontrolled time, unlimited money.
She's not talking about Clinton, folks. She's not talking about William Jefferson Clinton, the former president. She's talking about the government and Ken Starr going after and impeaching President Clinton for lying under oath. She's not talking about all of those women who were victims of Bill Clinton.
Investigating the president of the United States.
That back then, and look, both Senator Gillibrand and Mayor de Blasio were basically making the argument that our culture's changed. And that today, same allegations probably would have led Democrats, perhaps like yourself, to call for his resignation.
I don't know. I don't know. As a matter of fact, Nancy Pelosi is going to give an answer that will basically lead you and me to believe that nothing has really changed. That all these people do is they protect their own, especially Democrats. Now, allegations against Republicans, the alleged party of values, they immediately resign, or as you've seen in the case of Roy Moore, ladies and gentlemen, the Republicans demand they drop out, demand they resign. Democrats don't do that. As a matter of fact, Nancy Pelosi is about ready to give a modern-day answer. You saw what she did back then. She said women value their privacy. If Bill Clinton raped them back then, they really wanted their privacy. They didn't want it to come out. As a matter of fact, all of Bill Clinton's accusers wanted the time of day, but Democrats like Nancy Pelosi, and sadly individuals in the basket of biased press, wouldn't give them the time of day because they were all out. They were all Democrats, and they were all out to protect Bill Clinton, not the victims of Bill Clinton.
You can have a debate about whether it was an impeachable offense, but whether he had the moral standing to stay in office. Do you agree with this idea?
Wait a minute. He lied under oath. That for the commander-in-chief, for the chief law enforcement officer of the land to lie under oath, that is not good. You can't do that. You broke the law. You can't be the president of the United States and breaking the law, Chuck Todd. And that's what Bill Clinton, yes, moral standing, whatever. It was an impeachable offense. Lying under oath is an impeachable offense.
This is a generational change that we're experiencing?
Well, I think obviously it is a generational change, but let me just say the concern that we had then was that they were impeaching the President of the United States, and for something that had nothing to do with the performance of his duties, and trying to take him out for that reason.
Bill Clinton was not impeached because of an affair he had with Monica Lewinsky. That's not an impeachable offense. Poor moral character, sure, but it's not an impeachable offense. The impeachable offense was lying under oath, and that's what got him. And that's what got Bill Clinton impeached. That's not look, and of course the rapes that he was alleged to have conducted. He has never stood a day for the rape he was alleged to have committed or the sexual assaults he was alleged to have committed. So this rewriting of history by Democrats is really starting to infuriate me. Nancy Pelosi went on to talk about, you guys may have heard of a guy by the name of John Conyers. He's the longest serving sponge in the United States Congress. The reason I call them a sponge is that, you know, political figures, folks, they were never meant to have careers in politics. They were supposed to get in, do their duty, and then leave. And that's not what we have today. We have career politicians like John McCain, John Conyers, and the like. And is it any wonder they're drunk and addicted on power, and they're drunk and addicted on having their salaries paid by the American taxpayers? Here's Nancy Pelosi being asked about John Conyers.
So define zero tolerance. You said there's now a zero tolerance.
Yes.
John Conyers, what does that mean for him right now?
Let's say
in or out?
We are strengthened by due process. Just because someone is accused, and was it one accusation? Is it two? I think there has to be. John Conyers is an icon in our country.
Oh, so John Conyers has, I think, total 3 now. 3 accusers who have come out and said that he abused them. As a matter of fact, he settled one of them for $27,000 of our money. He paid $27,000 of taxpayers' money as hush money to one of his victims. So there's Nancy Pelosi saying, oh, well, we have due process, except if you're Roy Moore and you're a Republican. Then, well, there's no due process for you, right, Nancy?
He has done a great deal to protect women, Violence Against Women Act, which the right wing is now quoting me as praising him for his work on that, and he did great work on that. But the fact is, as John reviews his case, which he knows, which I don't, I believe he will do.
Don't you?
I believe that he will. Excuse me, may I finish my sentence?
Sure.
That he will do the right thing.
Do the right thing. Well, John Conyers has resigned from his head of the Judiciary Committee post, but he's still in Congress. Is that doing the right thing? Remember, John Conyers paid somebody off to shut them up with your money. Does John Conyers belong? As a matter of fact, his hometown newspaper and several other members of Congress are calling on him to resign. Nancy Pelosi, just like she defended Bill Clinton back in the day, she's defending John Conyers, and she's going to defend Al Franken. The Democrats defend their perverts and sexual assaulters.
And is the right thing what? Resign?
He will do the right thing in terms of what he knows about his situation, that he's entitled to due process, but women are entitled to due process as well.
But he got it. He took advantage of a situation where he had the rules of Congress, and I know you guys want to change these rules, but he got to hide his settlement. He got to, his accusers had to go through all sorts of craziness. So why is he entitled to new due process in this case?
No, we are talking about what we have heard. I've asked the Ethics Committee to review that.
Yeah. Ask the Ethics Committee to review that, to where hopefully the news cycle will go on and we can bury it. This is, folks, when people get referred to the Ethics Committee, that's where things go to die. That's where things go to say, okay, we're taking care of it. Now everybody tune out. And that's what Nancy Pelosi wants to do. She's such a champion of women. She wants all of the victims of John Conyers to be swept under the rug. Do you see Nancy Pelosi making sure we get to the bottom of what happened with John Conyers, Al Franken, and all of these other members of Congress, which we'll get to here in a minute? Nancy Pelosi continued, and she was pressed, and I got it. Chuck Todd once in a while shows glimmers of fairness. Chuck Todd once in a while will show glimmers that he knows how to give a hard interview to Democrats, and this was one such interview.
I guess it goes back to, what is this line? Right? What is a fireable offense? You say it's zero tolerance.
Yes.
But what does that mean if you're saying John Conyers, who already had due process, gets to stay, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you what it means. It means you get zero tolerance if you're a Republican. You get zero tolerance if you're a conservative. Democrats can abuse women all day long, and they get referred to the Ethics Committee. The Ethics Committee, to where they'll be able to stay in Congress. And by the way, if they're lucky, they'll get to use your taxpayer money to silence those they victimize.
Well, as I said, we've asked for the Ethics Committee to review that, and he, I believe, will do the right thing.
Where are you on
it's
Senator
about going
Franken?
forward.
Where are you on Senator Franken?
Well, I don't think that you can equate Senator Franken with Roy Moore.
No, well, you can't, because Senator Franken has admitted to wrongdoing. I think he's up to 3 accusers as well. 4 accusers, I think, at this point. 3 or 4. doesn't really matter. Ann Coulter was joking about Al Franken, that he has pledged that he is going to hold on to his seat. And Ann Coulter joked that seems to be his specialty, holding on to seats. For those of you who don't know, Senator Al Franken has been accused of grabbing women's buttocks without permission. That seems to be his thing. Not to mention what he did to Leanne Tweeden, which was forcibly kiss her. What I'm to understand is that's a misdemeanor offense, which is really weird. I had some law enforcement folks reach out to me on the show, and I asked if you are a man or if you're a woman and you forcibly kiss somebody, isn't that assault? They said it's misdemeanor assault, not felony assault.
There's two different things. So let's have.
So you
some
would accept an apology right now from Al Franken if there's no other accusers, or if all we know are what we know?
But it also, his accusers have to accept an apology. The victims have some say in all of this as well. And that has happened in the past. People have accepted an apology.
Yeah, some say. They get some say. And your say, according to Nancy Pelosi, is to accept the good senator's apology. What if they don't, Nancy Pelosi? What will you do? Will you stand for the women, Nancy Pelosi, or will you throw them under the bus so you can keep your majorities, so the Democrats can have their power base inside of the U.S. Congress? What if they don't accept the so-called apology? And isn't it always easy to apologize once you're caught?
As is coming forth now and that I see in the press. But we didn't know because there was a non-disclosure agreement to protect the victims. Sometimes they...
No. Yeah, to protect the victims. I can't believe she did this. A non-disclosure agreement to protect the victims. Do you buy that? No, the only people being protected are the politicians who abused the women. Those are the only folks being protected by a non-disclosure agreement. And by the way, it was yours and my money that was put on the line in that NDA. Shouldn't you and I have a say in this if we're footing the bill for the reprobates on Capitol Hill like John Conyers?
Didn't want to be public. Sometimes they did.
Yeah. She's trying to say that NDAs are there to protect the victims. Does anybody buy that? Well, somebody who doesn't buy it is Carly Fiorina. She was a presidential candidate, one that I personally really liked. Thought she would have made an excellent president. Here she is on Fox News Sunday and boiling this all down.
Well, that's politics, isn't it, Chris? This is all about politics, and that's why when politicians talk about this, it doesn't have a lot of credibility. This has been going on in politics for a very long time. Democrats try and defend their own. Republicans try and defend their own. It's a little bit like George Washington warned us 200 years ago. The problem with politics and political parties is they will care about winning above all else.
Yep. And doesn't that just typify what you saw Nancy Pelosi do? Franken, Conyers, and all the others who are accused of sexual misconduct. She will bend over backwards so that they don't lose momentum and it's not tattooed to the Democrat Party. It's sick. And the victims, and Nancy Pelosi's a woman. And Nancy Pelosi is a woman, and she would sell other women up the river just to protect her little majority in the United States Congress. The biggest issue that we have had here on the Chris Salcedo Show is that slush fund. That slush fund that pays out yours and my taxpayer dollars to the victims of these individuals, and you and I don't get to know. And they get to keep it secret. Guy Benson was talking about this on Fox News Sunday. But before I get the guy, I will repeat our call to Senator Mitch McConnell, to Speaker Paul Ryan, to Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, and to Chuck Toomer, the New York senator. Release the names of lawmakers past and present, the amounts of money that were paid out in their name to silence their accusers, and expel them from Congress. Use the Roy Moore standard on those individuals. Remember the Roy Moore standard? Mitch McConnell and his merry band of Republicans in name only on Capitol Hill have said they will expel Roy Moore if he wins his election. Okay. than every other member of Congress who is accused, just accused, not proven, just accused, must suffer the same fate, yes? Here's Guy Benson.
You think, you know, I guess having been in Washington a long time, I'm always skeptical. Yes, they're going to take a vote this week and mandatory sex harassment training for members and their staffers. Do you think it'll go further? Do you think that Congress will really clean up its act? That's not a rhetorical question.
No, because it's a self-protection racket. That's the whole point of this. Both parties know that there are people in their ranks being shielded by the status quo.
Self-protection racket. Now, how many of you, show of hands, think that this is the only self-protection racket the people in Congress have created for themselves to protect them from us? Accountability to us, those who are paying the freight. But Guy Benson is spot on. A self-protection racket. That's what this is.
And it's a numbers game. It's all about politics. And so they aren't necessarily keen on this. So the only way that it'll happen is if the American people are angry enough in a sustained way to make sure that a bill comes to the floor and is voted on and is passed, and people who vote against it are shamed, because there aren't good reasons to vote no. I would view, at least on a transparency-minded bill.
Yeah, there is no good, and that's why this vote must happen. That's why I am encouraging all of you to write or email or call your congressman or your senator's office and tell them you demand a vote before the end of the year to get rid of this slush fund and to create transparency. We deserve to know all of those individuals who were accused. We deserve to know, because our money was used to pay off the accusers.
When people talk about draining the swamp, it's hard to imagine something more swampy than this, where our elected representatives can abuse their power, abuse subordinates, and then secretly use a slush fund of our money to pay them off without any of the details ever being released. The fact that that is the current status quo is jaw-dropping, I think, to most taxpayers, and is completely unacceptable. On its face, that cannot continue.
It can't. It is arrogance. It is entitlement. Notice I have not specified in this particular instance any political party. They all should go down. This is an abuse of power. This is an abuse of your hard work, my hard work, and the money we send up there to Capitol Hill that is flushed down the toilet to protect their own human failings. And it ought not be allowed to stand, ladies and gentlemen. More on this, an update on some of the accusations we already know, a review from last week. Coming up, the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide here on the VIDA Television Network. Welcome back. It's Chris Salcedo Show worldwide here on the VIDA Television Network. Get in touch with the show right there, chrissalcedo.com or at chrissalcedotx on Twitter. Before I get into anything else about a review from where we were last week, I've got to address this clip from Senator Jeff Flake. He's an establishment guy who will not stand for re-election because he has no support among his base. Have a listen to what he said.
Come the party of Roy Moore and Donald Trump. We are total.
Okay, he was saying if we become the party of Roy Moore, Donald Trump, we are toast. Look, I've got to speak to the tone deafness of this before we get to this guy and others. The tone deafness of all of this is amazing to me. Jeff Flake and those who are of his ideological persuasion, most Democrats, and an alarming number of Republicans. These individuals don't realize in the Republican Party who they have to blame for Donald Trump. If Jeff Flake, Bob Corker, Mitch McConnell, John McCain, Shelley Moore Capito, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, did I get Portman in there? Well, if I didn't, I mentioned him twice. Those types of people if they had given a half-hearted effort, just a half-hearted effort, not just in words only, but actually stood in the way of Barack Obama and his assault on the American spirit over these last 8 years, they wouldn't have lost control of their party. But they promised and they promised and they promised and they promised and they promised, and all they did was enable Barack Obama his entire occupation of the Oval Office. And Barack Obama was doing some crazy things, unconstitutional things, anti-American things. Jeff Flake has one person to blame and only one person. Well, actually, just look in the mirror, Jeff Flake. Those and others like you. It's not Donald Trump making the Republican Party the Donald Trump Party or the Roy Moore Party. You guys abandoned that mantle when you decided your job was to get along with Democrats. All right. Behind me is Charlie Rose. The last I think we reported on Charlie Rose is that he was accused of sexual misconduct, and he was fired from CBS, and his show was canceled on PBS. Well, the latest on this from Charlie Rose is that there are now accusers coming out from CBS News as well. Charlie Rose, in a matter of 24 hours, his career was over because of some, like I said, crazy things he had done. Misconduct, exposing himself naked in the shower to young ladies who were there interning. Glenn Thrush, by the way, looks like he's there on CBS, as a matter of fact, ironically enough. Glenn Thrush is a New York Times reporter, and Glenn Thrush has also been accused by female reporters of sexual misconduct. And the New York Times, the latest on this is they're struggling. They're having a really hard time letting go of Glenn Thrush. We don't know whether we should, whether we shouldn't, because he's a good Democrat after all. He's a good liberal extremist. So the New York Times is, well, you know what? He may be a sexual abuser, but, he's a good liberal. So they're struggling over the New York Times. Mark Halperin, formerly of MSNBS, when he was at ABC, the political director over there, that's where all of these allegations stem from, making lewd advances and abusing his power. There's a pattern here, folks. The abuse of power by men in position of said power. Now, does this happen to females? Meaning the females being in power and them abusing men? Yes. We just don't hear as much about that. And as a matter of fact, we barely hear about the men abusing their power. What do you think about the shoe being on the other foot? That's going to be even less incidents of reporting. William Jefferson Clinton, of course, we talked about that in the first segment. Nancy Pelosi defending this guy. About Bill Clinton, there are 4 new accusers that have come out. High-ranking members of the Democrat Party have come out and said 4 new accusers for Bill Clinton, sexual harassment or sexual misconduct. What's going on here? Why would the Democrat Party rat out Bill now, after they defended him all those years ago? Well, the dirty little secret is, folks, they want the Clintons gone. The Democrat Party wants the Clintons in the rearview mirror, and this is the only way they can think of to show him the door, to basically undermine any political cachet he may have. So, speaking of Democrat occupiers of the Oval Office, President Obama speaking with another serial female abuser. Stories have floated around Washington when Ted Kennedy was alive about what he had done to waitresses. Of course, we all know about Chappaquiddick when he allegedly killed an intern and got away with it. Ted Kennedy is from a family of serial abusers, at least in his generation. JFK had his liaisons bust in and out of that White House. It was like a revolving door, Marilyn Monroe being one of the more prominent ones. There he is, his brother, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And guess who covered up, too, for this Democrat? The biased press. John Conyers, we mentioned a lot about him in the first segment. John Conyers is the oldest serving member of Congress. He's an affront to what the founders really wanted for this country, which was a service-oriented government. This guy has made government his entitlement. And John Conyers couldn't make it in the private sector. That's why he must sponge off the American people and continue to get their salary. By the way, his salary from them, Mr. Conyers is vowed he will continue to stay, even though he did resign, as we said in the first segment, from the powerful Judicial Committee. He's going to stay in Congress as long as it's permitted. So too will him. This guy. That's Senator Al Franken. Senator Al Franken has pledged he will hold on to his seat as well. And as we said, this is just a good joke. I can't let it go unused. Ann Coulter observed that that's Al Franken's specialty, is holding on to seats. They have a sense of entitlement about them, folks. I deserve to be there, says Al Franken. I deserve this. And nobody who I've sexually abused is going to steal that from me. Harvey Weinstein is the one who arguably got this whole ball of wax rolling, didn't he? He is the one that broke the dam. Now, will anything come of this? That's the fundamental question. Hollywood is already being rocked by this scandal, but to what end? Will there be the needed reforms? Carly Fiorina, who we heard from in the first segment as well, said until powerful men who are not abusers come forward and start holding these guys accountable, nothing will change. Kevin Spacey has a couple of new accusers as well. Hollywood has been the home of this. And you know what? Even Sylvester Stallone, which he said it never happened. We've got to throw this stuff in there. Kevin Spacey said, well, it may or may not have happened. He gave a Roy Moore type answer to this. So, but Sly Stallone unequivocally said that this just did not happen. And that's the cautionary tale here, isn't it? Because it doesn't take much imagination for those with political minds or extortion in mind to make something up and use this as a political weapon. Of course, the aforementioned Roy Moore has 7 accusers now, and one that he is going after aggressively. The others he's not addressing. The one woman who said that she was abused when she was 14, which was he made a pass at her and she said no and felt uncomfortable and take me home. He did when he was in his 30s. Roy Moore says he doesn't even remember her. So again, at this point, it's a he said, she said. And of course, the man with 12 sexual allegations against him, many of them have been recanted or many of them have been refuted, is the president of the United States, Donald Trump, who injected himself into the debate. And we'll probably have more on this in the coming days. For a while there, the official White House position was, well, if these accusations are true, Roy Moore should step aside. The White House has changed its stance to basically say, well, you know what? These are 40-year-old accusations, and Roy Moore insists he's innocent. So you've got Roy Moore saying, I'm innocent. You've got the accusers saying that he's guilty. And Donald Trump's position is, well, you know, you've got to believe, you got to have, both have to have their day in court. And the last thing we need, says Donald Trump, the president of the United States, is a liberal in that seat in Alabama. On principle, I agree. It'd be disastrous for the country. But many are questioning the wisdom of Mr. Trump getting involved at this point. This is where we should have started. Roy Moore should have been backed up right away, and then with a strategy of basically ushering him out of office once he received the election, if that was truly the case. All right, folks, we'll be back tomorrow here on the Chris Salcedo Show. Hope you can join us then. The VIDA Television Network.